Welcome. So in this video, we are going to do Unit 2, solving equations with one unknown. There are 4 practice quizzes I recommend that you go through on Khan Academy to practice with these equations. And on OutSchool, you can also use the worksheets that I provide for this unit to practice solving equations. Being that this is 8th grade math, I often get lots of students. They come into this class are not yet ready for some of the 8th grade material because they don't remember or they never learned how to do stuff from 6th, 7th grade. And what you need to know from 6th and 7th grade math, and I recommend you go through this before you even do this unit or make sure that you know it. If you go to the Get Ready for 8th grade section, this is a list of all the things you should know how to do. You should know the basics of equations. You should know how to solve and do inverse operations with one-step equations, and also how to solve and move things around with two-step equations, combine like terms, and distributive property. And the reason is because you're going to see these. If you don't know how to do these, you're going to see these in this unit. So if you're very confused on solving equations at this point, when we're going over it, if you have no idea what I'm talking about or what I'm doing, you should review. I recommend you go through this unit and review each individual quiz. Math builds on itself. If you cannot do two-step equations, you can't do multi-step. If you can't do one step, you can't do two-step. That's just how it is. These are much more advanced. Keep that in mind. All right, so when I'm saying things like combine like terms, distributive property, moving things around, you should already know that. That should not be completely new to you. Okay, so here I am combining like terms, right? Steps to solving equations. And I always go over this with students. Step to solving equations. What do you do first? First, you do the distributive property if it's present in your problem. Then you combine like terms on each side of the equal sign, and then you move things around. And to remember this, you can just say DCI. All right, so here we're combining like terms. What's negative 1f, right? Because that's a negative 1f plus 4f. That's 3f. So I have 3f plus 2 equals 8 minus 3f. All right, how do I solve this? What do I do now? Well, you put variables on one side. Doesn't matter what side. You can put them on the left or the right. As long as you put variables on one side, which I'm doing, I'm adding the 3f here to get 6f, and numbers on the other. So variables on one side, numbers on the other. Even if I did numbers on this side and variables on the other, it does not matter. You can see for both of these equations, you're going to get a positive 1. So it doesn't matter how you move things around as long as you're moving things around correctly. If you're completely confused when you're doing your problems, of course, Khan Academy will show you the way they did it. You can do these with fractions and decimals. But once again, if you do not know how to add fractions by hand, so let's see, for this one, I'm going to add 7/5 to the other side, right? So if you do not know how to do negative 2/5 plus 7/5, or even if these had different denominators, if you don't know how to do those by hand or with a calculator, then you need to first review fractions on its own. And lots of students don't know how to do fractions. I recommend you go through 5th grade math and practice them. Practice units 4, 6, 7. You need to know how to do fractions by hand. Practice using a calculator. Fractions will never go away. All right, so then I'm going to minus the 7b to the other side, and I'm going to get 5 over 5 equals negative 1b. This gets you 1 equals negative 1b. Divide both sides by negative 1. B is negative 1. Right? We're just moving things around. We know how to move things around. We know how to do right? When we know how to do all of these things that I'm saying, then these are so much easier. If I came into this and I didn't know how to do fractions, decimals, I don't know how to move things around, I don't know how to solve equations, I don't even really know what an equation is, then yeah, you're going to have a much harder time. So make sure you know that stuff first. All right, so same thing here. We're going to put variables on one side. So I'm going to minus 1.25f to the right, minus 10 to the left. I get negative 8 equals, what is this, negative 3, negative 4f. Divide both sides by negative 4, right? You can see that this multi-step turned into a one-step equation that you learn from 6th grade math, right? Sometimes you'll see these equations will turn into one steps, turn into two steps, which is why you should know one steps and two steps. Easy peasy. Moving on. You'll also see some of these that have distributive property. The only difference here is you're doing distributive property. So do distributive property first. How do you know it's present? You see parentheses in your problem. You cannot add those together. They're unlike terms. To get it out of parentheses, you need to distribute. And once again, now this is a two-step equation, right? We know that when we know how to solve two-step equations, this is simple. All right, so divide 9 on both sides. So we divided 9 on both sides and we get h is equal to 2. We can also, I don't know if I mentioned this, remember, you can always check your answers by plugging in. Get in the habit of checking your answers. If you were taking a test, you definitely want to plug in and make sure you get your answer correct. And you can do so by plugging in. You can see we got 2, right? We got h is 2. We're plugging that in for h and go in PEMDAS order, which you should know how to do PEMDAS. 4 minus 18 gets us negative 14. That's our answer. It's correct. We can do these as well with decimals and fractions, but we need to know how to multiply fractions. 3. So if you don't know how to do the fractions by hand, you can use a calculator, but overall you should know how to do them somehow, some way. 3 times negative 1/4 k is negative 3/4 k. 3 times 3 is 9. Let's add 3/4 to this side. That'll get you 1/4 plus 3/4, which is 4/4 k equals 9, which is 1k equals 9, which if you divided both sides by 1, k is 9. Plug in, check it if you need to. All right, let's do a decimal one. Definitely using a calculator with the decimals. Those are a pain to do by hand, but if you want to do them by hand, feel free. Sometimes they're a little easier. Like this is what's half of 5, that would get you 2.5. What's half of 7? Negative 3.5x. So that part's a little simple. Distribute the negative here. That gets you 8 minus 4x minus 6. Combine like terms, that gets you 2 minus 4x. And always, wait, hold on. Let me make sure I did my decimals right. 0.5 times negative 7. Yep, that's right. Okay. So then I'm going to move variables on one side. That's going to get me 0.5x. I'm going to move the numbers to the other. That's going to get me negative 0.5x. And divide both sides by negative 0.5. And you're going to get negative 1. Feel free to practice these. When you get it wrong, see how Khan Academy did it. That way you can learn. The more you solve equations, the better you will get. Solve as many as possible. Let me know if you have questions. Good luck.